Welcome to God's house. If you have been given the clearance level to view these files, then you may. If not, please leave these files now. And if you are caught tampering with them again, you will be terminated immediately. This is your one and only warning. If you do not have class level Peter or have been told by the O12 Council to look at these files, you will immediately be terminated. File 1. Welcome to God's house. The rushing waters of the ocean crash in the sea. The raging storm of the Bermuda Triangle prohibits anyone from entering it and leaving alive. This storm has always been a mystery. How did it form? Why does it exist? When did it come to be? Well, it all started in 1898 when Morgan Garrison, codename St. Michael, founded the foundation called God's House, built below the surface in the Bermuda Triangle. To hide this foundation from the public eye, the artificial storm was made, its raging hurricane winds deterring any curious person from exploring something they never should have looked for. God's House is 400,000 square feet underwater facility that houses beings of all shapes, sizes, makings, and origins. Description: God's House, as previously stated, is 400,000 concrete facility, located 400 miles below the surface, located in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle, protected by a Category 5 hurricane. God's House is a governmentally funded facility that, as previously stated, contains all creatures of origin and states. Introduction. We welcome all of you beings to God's house. Here you will learn about all who and what we contain. Due to your high clearance level, as stated of you being here, you have access to all files, audio logs, and more. Please, however, do abide by the rules and protocols of the facility. Rules. Due to the high risk of working in this facility, we do have some rules you must abide by, no matter your clearance level. 1. Do not talk, deal with, or anything else with any entities unless given orders from the O12 Council. 2. If there is a containment breach, please follow the procedures stated later on in the introduction of your new home. 3. If you speak of, make notice of, give information of, or do anything to bring God's house to the knowledge of the public, no matter your clearance level, you will be terminated immediately. 4. Do not interact with any C-Class unless instructed to, or you are part of the Archangels and are instructed to do so by the O12 Council. 5. Do not provide anything to any C-Class unless instructed to by the O12 Council or Archangel. 6. Finally, if there are any signs of weakness in a containment cell, or you hear C-Class speaking of doing something they shouldn't, please report it to the Archangels in your sector immediately. Now, please enjoy your stay at God's house, and as always remember, if God didn't make it, it shouldn't exist. File 2. Information for breaches and containments and what to do if one occurs. A man would close the pamphlet after reading over everything that has been stated, folding it up and stuffing it into his pocket. He is in a room with about 15 other people, each one varying in ethnicity and looks. Hearing a door open, he would look towards the noise. A so-called archangel would enter the room. Once they were inside, they would shut the door and speak. Once you are all done reading the overview, please stand and line up and follow me. At those words, the man and everyone else in the room would stand up in near perfect coordination and line up in front of the archangel. As soon as everyone was in line, the archangel opened the door and exited through it. In turn, everyone in line followed behind him. As they walked, the man would look around the facility. So far, all he could see were the concrete walls and smell of fish and salt. Finally, the group would reach another door. The archangel would open the door and go inside. Stepping inside revealed a new room with 15 chairs, as well as a large projector in the middle. Everyone, take a seat and look forward, the archangel spoke, leading everyone to take a seat and do as instructed. Once everyone was seated and looking forward, the archangel would flick a switch, causing the lights to go out and the projector to come to life. A white screen flickered on with the text, Containment Breaches, Do's, and Don'ts. The screen would then flick again to an animated version of a researcher and an entity. Here at the House of God, we pride ourselves on the safety of all team members. So, for your safety, please Follow these do's and don'ts for if a containment breach occurs. The researcher spoke before gesturing to the entity, who would then break down the wall of the containment cell. Here we have a containment breach. Now, in case this happens, you will be equipped with a walkie-talkie, like this one. The researcher spoke while showing a walkie-talkie. If a breach occurs, please notify all personnel in your sector immediately to evacuate, as well as give a description of the entity and their class level. An example, here. The researcher would then switch the walkie-talkie on and speak into it. We have a breach in Sector 2A. The entity is a tall, male, humanoid creature, class level safe. The researcher would then exit the cell as the sounds of archangels could be heard entering the area. The screen would flick again to another scene of a containment breach. The entity and the researcher standing there again. Do not leave the site of the breach without notifying all personnel in the area first. The researcher spoke as he ran off, the entity running after them as the sound of screams can be heard. The scene flicked again to the breach and containment a final time, the entity and the researcher standing there again. Finally, in case of a breach, do not engage the entity. This can lead to some unwanted circumstances. The researcher spoke as they lifted a hand and poked the entity, causing the entity to bite and tear off his hand. The scene would go back to the usual as the researcher spoke. Please abide by all these rules and have a wonderful time working at the house of God. And remember, if God didn't make it, it doesn't deserve to exist. With that, the screen would flick off as the lights came back on. The archangel speaking again. Please stand and form back into a line. We will now go and get your names, your new life, your new face. With that, everyone would stand again in perfect unison and follow the archangel out of the room. The man following in the back. Jesus, what hell is this place? The man spoke, rubbing his head as he walked behind everyone. File 3. Identity. New and improved. The group of people followed behind the archangel. The hallways they traveled through all looked the same, grimy, ingredient, bleak, and unloving. As they neared a new room, the archangel spoke out again, giving instructions on what to do once the people entered the room. When you enter the room, do not break out of the line. Each of you will be scanned and given new names, identities. Your old life is over, whether you ask for it or not. And if you don't like it, you can always go with the C class. The archangel snickers as they finally reach a room, opening the door to reveal a large room with a large facial scanner in the middle of it. A researcher stationed at the scanner. All right, all of you, one by one, approach the scanner and stand in front of it, the archangel yelled as everyone did as told. One by one, everyone would approach the scanner. Names such as Meredith, Grant, Marco, Stephen, Max, and more were given out, each person's old life being stripped away by each letter of their new name. The man would finally step up to the scanner, the lights around it flashing green and white, yellow and red before shutting off. The researchers then looked up at him, speaking to him. Hello, Mox. Welcome to the house of God. Please get back into line. The man, now named Mox, would sigh as they nodded. Yeah, thanks, mate. Mox spoke as they walked off and got back in line. After everyone was done, the archangel would turn back and open the door, leading the group out of the room. As everyone filed out of the room, Mox would look back. Mox would as usual be in the back, now breathing into his jacket, trying to mask and ignore the salty, fishy smell. The walls around them as they traveled slowly shifted into a more well-kept and clean area. These walls no longer full of grime and dust, now clean and even shiny. The smell, too, was no longer that of salt and fish, but of fresh air and flowers. As they continued to walk, Mox would spot different rooms labeled Log Containment, File Containment, Identity Containment, Legal Claims. Why not have it all just in one place? Mox asked himself, filling the silence in his head just to give him some company as they traveled. Finally, the group led by the archangel would reach a large double door. The top of the door read, Saint Michael. Mox would roll his eyes as he read the label, mumbling to himself as he did. Just how religious is this place? Mox sighed as the doors swung open, revealing a well-kept area with a large wooden pane in the back showing the ocean around them. The room was large, as said, a well-kept room. A singular chair was stationed at the back of the room. Sitting behind a desk, a man would be sitting at the desk, a mask covering their face. As the group walked in, led by the archangel, the man behind the desk stood up, looking over the group. He would push the chair back now, walking over in front of the desk before taking a bow. Welcome, all of you newcomers to the house of God. I am your humble ringleader of this foundation, Saint Michael. St. Michael spoke before returning to an upright position. File 4. Roles and responsibilities of all employees. The group would file in as the door shut behind them. St. Michael would nod to the Archangel, and the Archangel nodding back as they walked over and stood by St. Michael. St. Michael would look at the group before speaking again. As you all know, you have been chosen by the government for reasons you yet know. Those will be given in time. For now, I again welcome you all and appreciate all of you for risking your life to work here, even if you never asked to. St. Michael would nod to the group before snapping his fingers. The Archangel next to him nodding as they walked over to the desk behind him and grabbed a sheet of paper. Walking back over and handing it to Michael. Michael nodded to him, taking the paper and cleared his throat. Looking back at the group before speaking. Now, here we have a list of all of you, your specialities, and such. You will be assigned your places, and if you do not like your assigned area, you can always be taken to C class. And trust me, St. Michael laughed, shaking his head, that is not an option you want to pick. Now, St. Michael spoke happily, looking at the paper. When your name is called, please step forward, and you will be assigned your new jobs and living spaces till death. Now, lucky number 1, please step forward, Jack. As he spoke, the man named Jack stepped out of line and approached St. Michael. The man was fidgeting with his hands, his body language portraying his anxiety and fear. Who could blame him? This place, well, it ain't something to be calm about. St. Michael looked over Jack and then back at the paper before nodding. Welcome, Jack, to the disciples. Due to your high intelligence in biology and your background as a zookeeper and vet, you have been assigned to the role of disciples, St. Michael announced before pointing to his left. Go over there and wait for the Archangel to come retrieve and guide you to your new living space. Each person was called up, one after another. Some were made disciples, some were archangels. Finally, Mox was called up, standing in front of St. Michael. Michael would, as he did all the others, look him up and over, then return his eyes to the paper. Interesting, you seem to have no background in anything. No degrees or even a job hour. Interesting indeed, St. Michael muttered, looking over the paper. Mox would shrug as he spoke up to explain his reasons. I was in prison for 30 years. Never had time to really get out there. St. Michael nodded at Mox's words before speaking up. Perfect. Archangel it is. Go to the right and await for an Archangel to take you and the others in your group to your new quarters. You have now been introduced to God's house. Please close this file and head on to file 2, which explains the roles in God's house.